When you say, though, this is not your father's Republican Party.
This is not your father's Republican Party.
You have a very strong economic recovery story to tell. However, in less than 4 weeks, the government's going to run out of money. And so many of these economic wins could fall by the wayside. As president, what are you going to do to help us avoid default?
Look, not a single solitary Congress has ever reneged on the debt. The debt is not a debt that I accumulated. The debt is not a debt that occurred over the last several years. It's 200 years, the debt, 200 years. And the idea that we wouldn't pay our debt is just bizarre. It's estimated that if we didn't pay the debt, we'd lose 750,000 jobs, we'd have a recession, it would be a disaster. And the idea is someone for the first time is saying, unless you pass this ridiculous budget I have, which is the way I would characterize what the Republican MAGA budget is, unless you pass this budget, we're not going to increase the debt limit and we're going to go bankrupt. The United States of America is going to renege for the first time in history on its debt. And you just can't, no one's ever tied them together before. I've said to the Republican leader, here's the deal. Take the debt limit, pass it like you did 3 times when Trump was president, and he increased the whole national debt for 200 years by 40%.
Republicans would argue, and that Donald Trump, at the very least, they would say, played ball. You're not willing to play ball, they would say.
Played ball. What? He ballooned the debt. He created unemployment. Look, when I came to office, we had incredibly high unemployment. We're in a situation where we had very little movement on anything going on. And look at the employment rate now. Just today, 250,000 new jobs, highest participation in 75 years of women in the job market, lowest unemployment rate for African Americans. Things are moving.
As I said, you have a very strong economic recovery story, but this is a very volatile Congress. There are members of Congress that might be okay with us defaulting because they think it could hurt you more politically. Given that, are you prepared to invoke the 14th Amendment and blow through the debt ceiling?
I've not gotten there yet. And here's the deal. I think that, first of all, this is not your father's Republican Party. This is a different...
No, sir.
A different group. And I think that we have to make it clear to the American people that I am prepared to negotiate in detail with their budget. How much you're going to spend, how much you're going to tax, where can we cut? For example, in the first 2 years of my administration, I cut the debt by $1.7 trillion. 1.7 more than anybody's ever done in history. Their budget goes in, there's no possibility they can pass their budget. Zero possibility. They cut 200,000. Anyway, I shouldn't get going on it. But
when you say, though, this is not your father's Republican Party, is Kevin McCarthy an honest broker for you to negotiate with?
I think he's an honest man. I think he's in a position, though, he had to make a deal that was pretty, 15 votes. 15 votes that where he just about sold away everything that the far right. There's a Republican Party and there's the MAGA Republicans. And the MAGA Republicans really have put him in a position where, in order to stay Speaker, he has to agree. He's agreed to things that maybe he believes, but are just extreme.
Given the power that they have, is there anything you believe you can get done in the next 2 years on a bipartisan basis? And if so, what?
The answer is yes, I do, if I get a chance to get votes. They have to vote. They have to vote on something.
What would you want them to vote on?
Well, I'd like them to vote on whether or not they're going to provide for enough teachers in America so we can educate our kids. Because their budget proposal cuts 100,000 teachers, eliminates 100,000 teachers and their help. I'd want them to vote on making sure we have enough police and FBI agents in America. They're cutting 28,000 federal agents, FBI, DEA, and the rest. Why? They're making. I want to make sure they guarantee that we're not going to be doing anything to eliminate Medicaid support for people. They cut millions of Americans are being put in jeopardy. For example, one of the things that I think we've talked about is what I was able to do with regard to having Medicare be able to negotiate drug prices. It cuts the federal deficit by $160 billion, $200 billion over the life of this plan. They want to eliminate it. They want to eliminate it. You know why it cuts it? Instead of having to pay the recipient that needs insulin $400 a month, they only have to pay now $35 a month because it only costs them $10 to make it. Now that we can negotiate, they want to eliminate that. So they want to cost the federal government more money and keep people in debt.
You're talking about real practical solutions.
Absolutely.
When you reference insulin that you've come up with. Why do you think you don't get more credit for it? Why do you think your polling is where it is?
Well, I don't think people, by the way, every major one who won re-election, their polling numbers were mine are now.
Put polling aside then, right? Sentiment in this country, despite all these wins, is not very good.
I think all they've heard is negative news for 3 years. Everything is negative. And I'm not being critical of the press, but you turn on the television, the only way you're going to get a hit is if there's something negative. You don't, anyway, that's number one. But number two, I think we're in a situation where you have much of what we were able to do only is going to come into play now. For example, I met today, I set up what they call a second cabinet. Within my cabinet, I have an enforcement group. They're the ones going out making sure that we're getting the roads built, the highways built, and getting the lead pipes out of every neighborhood so people aren't dying or getting very sick. They're the ones who are making sure that people begin to know what's happened and what's happening. It's going to take time to get this done. And so unless we can make it clear to the American people what it is that we've actually done, it's one thing to say we're going to rebuild this bridge that is in the process of collapsing. Other thing to actually get it built. And that's all just starting.